Today's video was sponsored by Pop Culture Zone Pressing Services. If you need your comic books pressed, I personally vouch for Pop Culture Zone as being one of the best professional companies in the game, offering hands down the lowest prices out there. Services start at only $9.99, and every order placed will receive free fast track turnaround times. Even though I press comics for my personal collection, whenever I need a professional press for my key comics, I send them off to Pop Culture Zone, and every single book that I've received back, every single one has had results that have exceeded my expectations, and I am sure that they will exceed your expectations as well. Make sure you go check the link in the description below to head over to their website, popculturezone.com, for complete details on services and how to begin your order. What is going on, everyone? Chris with Journals, Comics, and Pop Culture. In today's video, we're going to be deep diving, looking at an analysis of this all-new Marvel Now Point One, number one, the Steve McNiven variant. This is the 1 in 75 variant that somebody posted in a Facebook group asking $10,000 for a 9.8. And we're going to dive into this. Is it valid to ask $10,000 for this book because it's quote unquote rare? Before we get into the video though, if you aren't subscribed to the channel, please take some time to do so. Check out all the links in the description as well, folks. But let's just talk about this book. I'm going to bring up a screenshot of this post that was in a comic book Facebook group. Of course, I'm not putting anyone on blast here, no names involved. But here is a post that states, extremely rare first full appearance of Kamala Khan. Only 20 exist in 9.8, making this one of the rarest grails of the modern era. As you can see here, it says all new Marvel Now Point One. They're asking $10,000 for it. And folks, this is a 9.8 CGC. I know you can't see it there because it's cut off, but it is. Take my word for it. So I'm not here to knock this seller. I'm here to critically examine this situation. Is this seller kind of out of their mind? $10,000 for this book? It's one of the rarest out there. There's only 20 on the census that exists. And what did I say in recent videos talking about the census, folks? If you guys haven't watched those, you can go check those out. Or does this individual have a fair point? Well, let's go ahead and bring up the census count here. We have this book right here in a 9.8. You can see right over here, Universal, there is only 20 on the census. So their number is accurate. They're not lying, right? Now, let's look at one thing first. Let's not look at the asking price. Let's look at them stating that this book is extremely rare, one of the rarest, modern grails out there. Let me preface this by stating this, and I've stated this before. Census count, low census count doesn't automatically equate to rarity at all. Why? Because there could be books out there, and I used a certain 90s second print book as an example, that had I think 22, 24, 9.8s on the census. It could simply be a matter that not that many people really cared to send this book in to spend money to get it graded trying to get a 9.8. There could be hundreds or even thousands of potential 9.8s out there of a certain book. So just because it has a low census count doesn't mean it's rare. It could mean that it's not valuable at all. And then you got to look at the fact that rarity doesn't necessarily equate to value. So, okay, there's only 20 something on the census right now, but it could be, like I said, nobody cared to spend money to get it graded. So just because it has a scarce number on the census, maybe a scarce amount of graded 9.8s out there on the market at any given time, it doesn't mean that it's valuable. Now, I'm not saying that's the case for this book because obviously Kamala Khan's first appearance is a very valuable book, even when we're just looking at the standard cover A. Now, let's look at this in terms of the 1 in 75, and let's look at the rarity of the book. Now, I have no idea the print run of this book. I don't know. I'm going to assume though that it was under 100,000 copies. 2014, limited copies were being produced. I know even nowadays, solid ordered books probably, I think on average, have about 50,000, if I remember correctly. If somebody knows more of an accurate number, please feel free to leave it in the comments below. One that I give it as an example that was just 3 years earlier was UF4, Ultimate Fallout 4 cover A. That had roughly a 71,000 print run. So let's just say, let's just estimate that this book had a 90,000 print run. All right. And this is a 1 in 75. So in order to get one of these books, you had to order 75. So that means if we take the whole print run and say, let's just say every retailer that purchased 75 copies got one of these. And let's just say that all 90,000 were bought by retailers. Okay. So if we take 90,000 and divide it by 75, that's 1,200 copies. So you could probably estimate that at max, there's 1,200 copies of this book out there. Now, there's two facts that we don't have here. One, we don't have the factual print run of this book, of the cover A. It could be less than that. It could be 75,000, which would put this number, this 1,200, under 1,000. And that would be a max. And then not every LCS and retailer ordered these books for every 75 they ordered. I can guarantee you that. So they're most likely, I'm going to state that there's most likely under 1,000 copies of this book in existence. And to be more accurate, there could probably roughly be more around maybe 500 to 750 in existence. Now, in the grand scheme of things, that's pretty rare. That's a pretty rare number of a certain comic book if people are out hunting for it. Now, let's go back to the 29.8s on the census. Is this really extremely rare in the sense that this individual is, making it out to be here, stating that it's one of the most rarest grails in the modern era? Now, I wouldn't go so far to say that, because I'm sure there's other grails out there that have incentive variants that, have a similar number of this. But I do believe that there are probably a solid amount, even if there's only 500, 600, 700, 800 copies of this book in existence. I guarantee that there is a good amount of 9.8 potential candidates out there. I would say confidently that there's probably the potential of this 20 at least quadrupling if people wanted to send in these books. So what does that mean for the census? It means don't look at the census and look at it as a foolproof number to gauge the value of this book and what's out there. We know that the Kamala Khan is coming. We got the trailer for the Miss Marvel TV show. I guarantee you, and you got to look at CGC and CBCS turnaround times. 6 to 9 months if you're not fast tracking. There's probably maybe a handful of these books at CGC or CBCS right now sitting there waiting to come back that are 9.8 potential. So we could definitely see that number increase. Now, the last sale of this book, we're going to bring up the sales here. The last sale of this book it didn't happen. The last sale of this book happened in September of 2020. And it happened for $2,600. Now, you saw a peak here, right here in July and August for $37.50 and then for $49.99. Those are outliers, folks, in my humble opinion. That is an outlier. We don't know with cover prices data if maybe the book was signed, if there was something else going on with the book that made this one right here sell for $5,000. So we can't really trust this. But you can see the last two sales, $2,800 and $2,600. Now, there could be a couple of reasons why this book hasn't sold a copy. One is because, yes, there is a limited amount out there, but maybe people just haven't, sent them into CGC, or maybe people that have are holding them because they're waiting for the show to come, or they're waiting for that moment. I mean, we did get a trailer. That's why this individual on Facebook is putting this up on the market right now. He's like, the trailer dropped. I'm going to maximize my return on investment because the hype is real right now. This is the time to sell. Let's go back to the $10,000 price point. Is this a fair price point? We got to look at this year and a half ago. This is about a year and a half ago now from this last sale. What has happened since then? Well, the quote unquote COVID market has definitely boomed, and we've seen some cool off as well, though. So there's that, but there's also inflation. So I think it would be absolutely fair to not sit and look at these last couple of sales and say, well, 2,800, I'm going to sell mine for 2,900 or even 3,000. I think it's even fair to look at these two that happened during that summer that happened for 3,750 and in the 4,999 and say, okay, well, they sold for that amount back then. I don't have all the data to see if they were just standard 9.8 blue labels, but if they were, this individual might want to go back and try to sell one for 5,000. But again, you got a year and a half time lapse. So I would put mine above 5,000. Would I ask for 10,000? I think that's pushing it. I think that's pushing it. But here's the name of the game, folks. This individual has every right to sit here and ask whatever they want for this book, whatever they want. And regardless if his wording about this being so rare, regardless of him looking at the census and saying only 20 exists, well, there's potentially more out there, right? Even though he's stating that, and I wouldn't have stated it like that, and as a buyer, I'm not going to get caught up into the 20 census count. He has a fair point. Because I say this often, scarcity in a comic book, there's two ways to look at it. There's scarcity in the sense of what was quote unquote manufactured, like how many may exist and how many are available on the market at any given time. So when you say scarcity on the market, it's not about how many are out there existing. It's about how many are available to purchase and then how many people are demanding that book and how many people want that book. Like, even if there is 20 on the market, what if 19 of those people are holding it because they're keeping it and they have no intention to sell it? Only one is out there. That means it's scarce on the market. I think this individual has every right to ask $10,000 for this book because they're right. The trailer just dropped. This character is peaking right now. There's been a time lapse of a year and a half since the last sale. The market has done crazy things since then. Ask $10,000. I ain't mad at you. Ask $10,000. Now, are people going to buy it for that much? I mean, good luck, but hey, as a seller, start high. Start high, cast the line, put the bait on the hook, cast the line and see if anybody will bite. If they don't, drop it down a little bit, drop it down to 9K. And if you have to drop it down to 8K, drop it down to 8K and see what happens. So the moral of the story here, folks, is two things. One, if you are buying and you look at something like this with this type of wording, I still encourage you all to be cautious. Understand that the census isn't the know all, see all, be all. You have to, critically think and say, well, it's a modern book, even though it's an incentive variant, 1 in 75. There's not that many out there, but there could be more potential 9.8 sitting that aren't on the market yet or aren't on the census yet. So how am I going to proceed into possibly making an offer on this book? But the other lesson is, as a buyer, we have the right to gauge the market, to gauge what the market's been doing, and to put all the variables and factors together and put an asking price out there, even if we start high. It's fair for a buyer or for a seller to start high, and it's fair for a seller to ask low. It's always fair. And then if you can work to a middle ground where you can agree on a sale price that works for the buyer and the seller, then fine. If you guys can't agree, then you move on. As a buyer, then that book wasn't right for you. As a seller, then that potential customer wasn't right for you. So while I don't know if this book will sell for $10,000, I'm not mad at them. And hey, let's see what happens when the Miss Marvel show drops. And of course, we're going to see Kamala in the Marvels movie. I have hopes. This could be a character that's going to be around for a long time. And maybe if it's not selling for 10K now, who knows what might happen 5 years down the line. So that's my video for today, folks. Let me know what you all think in the comments below. Would you pay $10,000 for this book? Thank you guys for watching. Be well, and until next time.